All right, moving on to the next division we will be breaking down today on the Zach Kroll Sports Podcast AFC Preview. That will be the AFC West. And I think out of all the divisions in football, the AFC West is probably the one where people share their opinions the most on in terms of who the winner is going to be. I have the defending Super Bowl champion, Kansas City Chiefs, winning the division. It's pretty obvious why, man. They have probably the best quarterback in the league, one of the best receivers in the league in Tyreek Hill. This offense is incredible. Andy Reid is one of the best coaches in the league. And when you look at the other surrounding teams in the division, you have the Chargers, who right now have Tyrod Taylor as their starting quarterback. The Raiders haven't really been able to win that much since John Gruden came in on a consistent basis. And then you look at the Broncos. I think they could be a sleeper team, but they're not ready to catch the Chiefs yet. So I have Kansas City winning this division. Andrew, to start off, any disagreements there?
No, I have my full confidence in the Chiefs. Pat Mahomes, I feel like he's going to be whooping ass in that division for the next years to come.
Yeah, I think when you look at this Chiefs team and what made them so interesting, Andrew, was last year this Chiefs team did it all. They dealt with so many injuries. They dealt with adversity multiple times, and I think it was such an incredible run for them. The fact that Andy Reid, as a head coach, had never won a Super Bowl championship. The fact that the year before they were so close in the AFC Championship game, and if D4 doesn't line up offsides, they're probably in the Super Bowl. And for them, down 24-0 against the Chiefs, down early to down to the Texans 24-0, and then down to the Tennessee Titans as well in the AFC Championship game. The fact that this team got the job done, dealing with all the adversity that they dealt with, I think they deserve a lot of credit, and they deserve, I think, to be going into next season considered the favorite in the AFC. My question for you, Andrew, was this. Like last year, I know you came on the podcast a couple times towards the back end of football season, but last year, how did you feel about this Kansas City Chief team? When was the moment for you that made you say, all right, these guys are good enough to win a Super Bowl? Because a lot of people last year, if you remember, didn't really trust the Chiefs' defense at all. And as the season went on, they got better and better and better. So was there a specific moment last year for you, or a certain player or a certain play, that made you just say, okay, these guys, this is the year for them?
Yeah, well, actually going back to the point where we talked about before, that 24-0 comeback that they came against the Texans was just a moment where I was like, damn, this looks like they're going to take this whole playoff run and just run away with it. And, that's what happened. And I'm not going to lie, the fact that their defense could hold up being down 24-0, even though they did bend, their offense was able to, it just showed all the firepower they had, how quickly they could score, how easily, and that their defense can hold up when needed. That was the point. And, even though it was late in the season, that's the point where I just saw, and I was like, come on, there's really no debate about who's going to be coming out of the AFC.
Yeah.
Who's going to win the Super Bowl. So,
yeah, I mean, you had so many different guys around this team step up. You had Chris Jones, and he just got paid. You had Frank Clark. And I think that's the other thing about this Kansas City Chief team that, for me, is going to be so interesting, is the fact that the Chiefs did a really good job locking up as many different guys as possible during the offseason in terms of guys that are going to be a part of the future of their franchise. When we see they locked up Pat Mahomes, they locked up Tyreek Hill, they locked up Travis Kelce, they locked up Chris Jones, and I think their general manager, Brett Veach, did a really good job of locking up these guys' contracts, and so that the rest of the team didn't have to worry about it, and so they wouldn't enter the season with any contracts as a distraction. Because I know sometimes a lot of people consider that to be, something that could pop up if you have as a distraction. If you have a player that wants to get paid but isn't doing it, especially in a championship atmosphere like Kansas City, where it is all about the team. And I think also when you look at this Kansas City Chief team, they just have so many different options. They bring in Clyde Edwards-Helaire, the running back from LSU, and I think the addition of him makes them, I think, this Chief team entering the season, Andrew, and you can tell me if I'm wrong, I think they're the biggest favorite to win a Super Bowl going into the season, as to repeat, since Russell Wilson and the Richard Sherman-led LOB Seahawks the year after they won the Super Bowl. Because I think right now when you look at the NFL, and you look at, who would you say is the best team in the AFC? It's going to be hard to say anyone but the Kansas City Chiefs, just because of everything they accomplished towards the back end of last season.
Yeah. I really agree with that. I mean, look, they have some flaws, but not too many. Their offensive line isn't the best. It's pretty all over the place. They have really good players in certain positions, and then there's some places that are just not really they're good at. So I do see how they could fall. I could see that, but just adding on to what you're saying, yes, I do think that I really feel like they're going to win the Super Bowl in my eyes. Look, man, the division, though, I'm not going to lie. If we take a look at it, it's not as far as we think, though, because we have the Raiders and the Broncos, and you know what? Like, these are a lot of teams that could just make a splash. But what I do have to say, though, is the Chiefs do have weaknesses, and that's the point I want to hammer. And if teams are able to exploit those weaknesses, I think they stand a shot or a glimmer of hope to overcome and beat the Chiefs. So that's what I just want to say.
Yeah, I think when you look at this, the possible concerns for this Chiefs team, there are a couple things that come to mind. Number one, yes, has made such a big point on they did bring everyone back, and they have a bunch of their starters coming back from the team the previous season that won the Super Bowl. Well, one guy that isn't going to be back is Laurent Duvernay-Tardif. He's usually their starting right guard, and this dude is like actually a doctor. Like, he has his PhD, and the reason why he's not playing this year is to battle COVID, so we all want to give him props for that, but on the field, that's a huge loss. So they're going to need Andrew Wiley, former 49er, to step in right away and take his spot. On defense, was their defense very good last year? Yeah, but at the same time, besides Chris Jones, Frank Clark, and Tyrann Mathieu, and maybe Juan Thornhill, a guy that we have to see is fully back from injury, besides those handful of guys, are there many other players on this defense that you really trust? No. So I think that's a possible, roadblock for them. But they bring back both coaches, which I think is a very big point. Steve Spagnuolo and Eric Bieniemy. Their two coordinators are both back, and I think with Pat Mahomes, with Travis Kelce, with Sammy Watkins leading, Tyreek Hill leading the way, I have the Chiefs winning the AFC West. What's your take on their defense, Andrew? Do you think they're gonna be able to at least do somewhat of everything that they were able to do last year?
Look, I do see that they're gonna have times of trouble, and I'm not really too concerned because their offense is the thing that's gonna power them through each team. I feel each week. Each week and out, in and out, I guess. But look, man, I do see one weakness that's glaring is their linebacking corps. They don't really have that many big names and a lot of guys stepped up last year, but I mean, their linebacker, I don't really know of any of their linebackers.
They did draft a kid, Willie Gay from Mississippi State. I don't know if he's projected to get the first crack at one of the inside linebacker spot already, but I like him. But yeah, I agree. Linebacker is a big part, and that's a position where if you don't have, guys that you trust to get the job done, it may not end up very well. But when you look at the Chiefs, man, usually it is very hard for a team to repeat as the Super Bowl champion. But I think in this season, with COVID and everything, and a lack of preseason games, and a lack of OTAs and training camp, really, the extended training camp, the normal time, I really think a team like this, with all the pieces back, and their continuity could have a very good shot at repeating and winning the Super Bowl. So, Andrew, any last thoughts or comments on the Chiefs?
No. I love that point you made, talking about how they have the continuity. That's really going to help them a lot this year because so many teams are not going to have the same practice with each other and the chemistry. So that's another thing to just add on to the resume for why they would be Super Bowl champs in 2021.
Mm-hmm. All right, moving on to the next team in the AFC West I want to talk about, and this is a team that really, since the beginning of last offseason, I've labeled as a team that I think could possibly be a sleeper and a team that I think could possibly make the playoffs in the AFC West, and that is the Denver Broncos. And we remember with this Denver Bronco team, they haven't really been good since Peyton Manning left. You remember he won that Super Bowl and he retired, and this Bronco team has had a lot of trouble finding the guy that will be the next franchise quarterback. They went through Paxton Lynch, they went through Trevor Siemian, they went through Brock Osweiler, and they really weren't able to find that guy. And some Bronco fans think that they have finally found that guy in starting quarterback Drew Lock. And the thing with the Broncos last season which was very interesting, so they brought in Vic Fangio. He was the defensive coordinator of the Chicago Bears to be their head coach, and he was in charge of that Bears defense that had Khalil Mack and lost in the double doink game. But anyway, I thought with his leadership on the defense and the ability to bring in talent on offense, they could be pretty good. And last year at the beginning of the season, Joe Flacco just really wasn't getting the job done. But after they benched him for the last 5 games of the season, this kid Drew Lock came in and led the Broncos to a 4-1 record. And I think since those last 5 games of the season last year, Bronco fans have been really, filled with optimism. The other thing I like about this Bronco team is that not only are they going to ride the momentum from last year that they built after they finished 4-1 down the stretch, but at the same time, they really made an effort to improve the team around Drew Lock by bringing in Melvin Gordon, a running back from the Chargers. They bring in Jerry Jeudy, one of the best receivers in the draft from Alabama, and KJ Hamler as well, rookie receiver from Penn State. They also bring in Jarrell Casey and AJ Boye on the defensive side of the ball. They have Justin Simmons and Von Miller there already. Bradley Chubb is a guy who's a former top 5 pick that people forgot about. He got hurt last season. And I think when you look at the way the Broncos ended last season in a wide open AFC, I really like the way they have this team set up. It all is going to fall on Drew Lock, but I just don't necessarily know if he has to do that much with all this talent around him.
Nah, man. I mean, look, the Broncos are they made a lot of moves that are really quiet, and I see them making a huge jump from last season. Look, Drew Lock's going to make a jump, I believe, and look, they put amazing talent around him. Melvin Gordon, they solidified the offensive line a bit. They drafted Jerry Jeudy, like you said. So, yes, I definitely agree. I think that actually the Broncos are going to be the number one threat, honestly, to take over the Kansas City Chiefs. And this is going to be a rivalry going. I see the rivalry generating because you got 2 young quarterbacks. Obviously, Pat Mahomes is has much more experience and talent than Drew Lock. But the talent that the Broncos are putting around, I wouldn't be surprised if they were one of the wildcard teams come in December and January.
Yeah, Kansas City goes to Denver. That's obviously a game to look out for on Sunday, October 25th. That will be a 4:00 game. And, I agree, man. I think I really like the talent the Broncos have brought into this team. I think their defense has just a handful of names that when you look at them, you're going to say to yourself, oh, wow, these guys could really play. They're really good. And I also agree that the fact that they're in such a weak division, I really am not high on the Raiders or Chargers at all. So I'm going to agree with you. I have the Broncos finishing in second place in the AFC West as a wild card.
Wow, yeah. So I'm glad we have that wrapped up. I mean, look, man, Broncos are definitely. I wish the Jets were in the Broncos position. I really like Jerry Jeudy. I think he's gonna be a game changer, and we're gonna see, man. We're gonna see how good the Broncos are. We're gonna see how good Drew Lock is with all this talent around him.
Yeah, the one concern I want to say for the Broncos is they did lose Jawan James, one of their starting tackles, to an opt-out to COVID, and obviously you're not going to blame him. You respect his decision, but at the same time, we have to talk about it from a football perspective. This is a guy that was making a lot of money and a guy the Broncos were really counting on. And now without him, they're going to rely on Elijah Wilkinson to be their starting right tackle. And to be honest, I just don't really know if he's going to get the job done. And then when you look at his other side, Garrett Bowles is a guy from Utah that has really just not panned out. Former first-round pick from Utah. They did draft Wood Cushenberry to be the starting center in the second round. So I think that's one, other thing, or the third round, excuse me. I think that's one key thing for this Bronco team, man. Like, as long as their offensive line can play well, I'm pretty confident they could be good, but hopefully Drew Lock just doesn't take that many hits in order to start his season. And just a key note for you, Monday Night Football Week 1, Tennessee at Denver. That will be a fascinating game for sure.
Yeah, definitely got to look out, because in that division you got a whole plethora of pass rushers from the Chargers having,
Bosa, yeah.
Joey Bosa, yeah. And then you got Frank Clark. That might be a problem definitely to look at.
Yeah, all right. Speaking of the Chargers, I want to get to them next. This is a very interesting team, and I think, for me, the problem with the Chargers is this. I don't really know what direction this team is going in, because 2 years ago, you remember, they made the playoffs. They won a playoff game in Baltimore. They went to New England, and everyone was saying, like, oh, these guys are finally going to be the team to knock off the Patriots. And all of a sudden, last year, they lost that game. They lost that playoff game. And last year, they were one of the more disappointing teams in all of football. And I understand the Chargers are just one of those teams where they can never stay healthy, and I feel like they always have some bad luck. But when I look at the way this team is built, I don't love it because I just don't know what direction they're going in. They bring in Justin Herbert, which is fine. Philip Rivers, it was his time to go. I get it. But Tyrod Taylor, I just don't think this guy is good enough to be one of the best, top-notch quarterbacks in the league. And I don't know if you're serious about winning, if you're going to name Tyrod Taylor your starting quarterback. Because the problem is, besides him, I like some of the talent still. Austin Eckler could really play. So could Keenan Allen. So could Mike Williams. I think their offensive line quietly is getting better and better. They have some names on defense, but I don't trust their coach and I don't trust their quarterback. And especially based on last season, and the Chargers are a team that they've already dealt with injuries. Derwin James, it's already been announced that he's going to miss most of the season. So, Andrew, when you look at this Charger team, what are your expectations for them? Because I think when I look at some of the talent around them, I could say, okay, maybe they could get to the playoffs. But at the same time, the more and more I look at it, I think this team is just very unorganized with the coach and the quarterback I don't really trust.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I don't see them making the playoffs because I don't see Tyrod Taylor taking them to the playoffs. They have a really good supporting cast, but then again, you put Justin Herbert in a position where he needs to make a very big jump from if he plays this year, which I hope he does, to next year. And they got to be expecting to make the playoffs because you got big contracts coming up with Bosa. And, you didn't sign your running back Melvin Gordon, but they just signed Keenan Allen to a 4-year contract, $80 million. So I have no idea where they're going. They're really putting their hopes into Herbert, but I don't see the talent in him to make that change and be a change.
Especially this year. I think there's some quarterbacks you say, like, when they get drafted, like, if they have some talent around them and, at the back end of the season, maybe we could get pretty optimistic about this guy. And if, you remember when Tyrod Taylor was the Browns quarterback a couple years ago when Baker Mayfield was a rookie? Yeah. It's almost like a similar situation to that. And I don't think Tyrod Taylor is just a guy where you feel confident, starting him and putting your young rookie on the bench. But I guess if your rookie quarterback isn't ready, I guess that's what's going to happen. But at the same time, when you play in the division with the Kansas City Chiefs, I don't see this Charger team being able to really get anything done.
Yeah, they're going to have they're going to have to look for. They better hope Justin Herbert is the answer because if he's not, then they're going to go through a lot of rebuilding with the contracts they're signing right now. So. Yeah, I don't see them making the playoffs, Zach, but, if they make an improvement and Herbert gets better, maybe they might be a threat in the years to come. It's just, I really did question their first-round pick. I thought they were all in this year, but I guess
Well, they needed a quarterback, so, I think they would. I think Cam would have been a good fit for them personally. I think that was one I was saying for a while, even though I do think him in New England is going to turn out pretty well. And I just don't trust their coach, man. Like, Anthony Lynn has had one good season. I don't think he necessarily has earned the job to begin with. And when you consider the amount of talent that this team always has and the fact that they're never able to get the job done, I don't really trust them to get that job done. And even though there's always talent on this team, there's always holes, there's always injuries. And even though Keenan Allen is a solid receiver, and I guess the Chargers had no choice to pay him, I just think he's a guy that's consistent with putting up his numbers. But I don't think he's a guy that, like, defensive coordinators that are facing him just sit all the time and say, all right, like, we're the night before the game and say, all right, like, we're going to have to do whatever we can to really stop this guy. Or if this guy stops us, we're going to be in big trouble. Because when you look at the way he plays, like, I don't know, he just hasn't really been able to put this Charger team over the hump. Going into last year, I was a huge fan of Mike Williams. Unfortunately for him, he hasn't really been able to get the job done as well. He was disappointing last year, former top 10 pick from Clemson. So, yeah, I just think there are way too many holes on this Charger team to trust them. I have them coming in third. Andrew, any other last thoughts on the Chargers?
No, I have them coming in third as well, and everything we've been talked about. I feel like there's nothing more to say on my part with the Chargers. Yep.
All right, moving on to the last team we will be going over in the AFC West, and that will be the Las Vegas Raiders. And it's going to be a little weird saying that. And this team is kind of similar to the Chargers because for me, there are some components of this team that I really like. And then there are some other components that I really don't like. And Andrew, I'll let you start it off. Give me your take on the Raiders.
Well, thanks, Zach. I just think that the Raiders are look, I feel like they have a solid future ahead of them, and they have the bundle of draft picks they have. I do like a lot of their picks that they have already chosen. I really love Jacobs and the edge rusher that they.
Ferrell, yeah, Cleveland Ferrell.
Yeah, and the second or third round pick.
Crosby, Max Crosby, yeah.
Yeah, so they have a really good. they have pretty good guys on the edge. I just see them as a team that's really going to be mediocre because their quarterback is pretty mediocre. Not gonna lie. Yeah. So I don't see them really making any big moves. I mean, the Las Vegas idea is pretty hype them up a little bit, but I think we got to take a step back and look at what they really are. And they're a team that's just in the middle of rebuilding with their draft picks, and they're not going to win now. And I see them being a solid team. I see them being probably 7-9. 6-10, 8-8 at best, but I don't see anything. I think the ceiling is 8-8 for them. So I like where they're going, but it's going to be another year, a long year for Raider fans.
That's interesting because here's kind of the way how I look at it. So John Gruden, he's obviously a great football mind. I just never know if I could take him seriously as a football coach in 2020 that could win games. I don't know if his locker room is really buying into his system as much as he wants them to. That's number one. Number two, Derek Carr has come out a lot this offseason and have talked about he's talked a lot about him wanting respect and him being confused as to why there are people picking the Raiders not to do well this season. And for me, the bottom line is this. This guy just hasn't really been that good and that productive since his MVP season. And he has to be better. And since that, season where he could have won the MVP until he got hurt, that was 2016, he hasn't been that good. And when you look at the talent on this Raider team, I really like their offensive line. I think their offensive line legitimately is one of the 5 best offensive lines in the league. And I think Josh Jacobs is going to be very good being able to run the ball. But at the same time, I don't love their quarterback and I don't love their receivers. They did draft Henry Ruggs from the University of Alabama. Truly, I'm not a huge fan of his. He's all speed. I need to see him prove that he could catch the ball and make plays before I go all out on him. I know a lot of people in the NFL see what Tyreek Hill has done with the Kansas City Chiefs, and they've tried to, mimic that style and that kind of play guy. I don't know if Henry Ruggs is going to be able to do that. And then, as you said, on defense, I really like Max Crosby, but there are some other guys they brought in and spent a lot of money on that I don't necessarily know if they're worth it. They bring in Nick Kwiatkowski, linebacker from Chicago. He's all right, but he's, for the first time in his career, about to become a starting linebacker. They also bring in Corey Littleton from the Rams. I like him a lot, but they're going to need some of their younger guys as well, like Cleveland Ferrell, like Damon Arnett and Jonathan Abram and Trayvon Mullen, guys that they've all drafted in the last couple of years that they're really going to need to get better. And I think when you look at the draft for the Raiders, I told you I really didn't like it at all. They drafted Henry Ruggs. I was never a huge fan of him, was never sold on him. And they drafted Damon Arnett with their second first-round pick, cornerback from Ohio State, a guy that was projected to go way after they actually selected him. So I think the Raiders right now have plenty of holes. I don't think John Gruden has ever really been a coach that since he's came back into the league that I could trust to get to the playoffs and get the job done for his team. Carr's inconsistent as well. I have the Raiders coming in 4th in the AFC West.
Yeah, same here. Can't preach so much anymore about how I think that they're not a team now in the future. And I just think I really think they're gonna have to move on for Derek Carr, to be honest, because I don't see him being the guy that's gonna dethrone Pat Mahomes, Lamar Jackson, Deshaun Watson. I don't see him in that echelon. And the sad fact is, I feel like they're going to have to rebuild. They're just trying to wait as long as they can to get a new quarterback. But if they don't do good this year, watch out.
Yeah, I think I could definitely see this being the last year of Derek Carr for the Raiders. I just think he's average, and eventually average can only take you so far in the NFL. But overall, when you look at this Raider team and this Charger team, both of these teams are under pressure to make the playoffs, and if they don't, there's a good chance that maybe they're in the Chargers' case their coach could be let go. Obviously, the Raiders are paying John Gruden a lot of money. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens. But last year as well, I expected the Raiders to be not very good last year, and they proved me wrong. And they kind of fell apart down the stretch. The Raiders up until week 14 or 15 last year were in the playoff conversation. They ultimately fell just short. So I think it's going to be interesting to see what this Raider team is able to do. Obviously, playing in Vegas will be a new idea and a new spot for these guys. So, we're on the same page. Have the Raiders in 4th, and that will do it for the AFC West.